And then we're going to come up here, we're going to remove this. Now we're to the point where we're actually going to bleed, and it's called bleed, the caliper. And what the bleeding in the caliper does is it allows all the air that's in here when we rebuilt this, it forces fluid down here, and it forces it up, and then that fluid comes up here and goes out the hole. That's why this piece right here has to be on top, because if the brake line was on top, you'd be trying to force fluid down here and air out here, while air bubbles want to go up and the fluid's wanting to go down. So if you make the fluid on the bottom and then have the bleeder on top, then you're forcing all the air out the top, because the bubbles in the air want to go that way anyways. So we will be using a 10mm wrench to bleed those. So let's get on here. And the way you do that is to open it, you pull towards the tire, and then to close it, you push towards the motor. All right, now at this point, we're going to go upstairs and we're going to check the brake fluid to make sure we got enough brake fluid in our master cylinder reservoir. If you don't, what happens is the reservoir will get low and it'll start pushing air in the line, and then you're defeating the purpose of all the work you just did. So let's go up on top. All right, now we're up on top, and here's your master cylinder, and this is what we're going to put fluid in. This side right here that has fluid in it is the rear, and this side up front that has no fluid in it is for the front brakes. So these do the front wheels and this does the back wheels. So we're going to take some brake fluid and we're going to dump it in, try to dump it in just the front only. Try not to get this in your car, on your car paint, because it'll eat your engine bay paint. Oops. All right, we're going to need a rag here. All right, we're good there. Let's get our rag, clean this up. Right, now you would think that you would want to put the lid on here. Actually, you don't. You want this to breathe. But because some of it may come up, I didn't really want to go this quite full. I'm going to put a rag down in here to try to catch. Probably need a bigger rag, son. That one that's on the ground over there probably work. You want to put a rag around here to catch any brake fluid that comes off so it doesn't eat the paint in your engine bay. All right, we're back. I decided against using that one that was over there because I remembered that we just inundated that whole thing with brake fluid. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to wrap this around here. This one has a little bit of brake fluid on it, but not a lot. So we're going to stuff it back over here to kind of grab anything that goes out the back. There we go. All right. So now we're going to go on the other side and we're going to bleed the brakes. Now you need somebody in the car to bleed the brakes. Let me show you what we do here. So you have somebody push on the brake pedal about 4 times. You pump them up. It's called pumping. You pump it, you say go. They pump it 4 times and they say down. And when they mean they're down, they hold it down until you tell them to pump again. Otherwise, what happens is the brake will come up and it'll suck air back in this hole right over there on the brake caliper. So let me show you that. So go ahead and sit in there. Now we're going to come back around to this side. If you find yourself getting up and down and you got brake fluid on your hand, wipe it off and either grab this to help yourself get up or grab the inside of the fender. Just don't get any brake fluid on your fender or your paint. Okay, so to open, we come towards the tire on the passenger side, and to close, we go towards the engine. Okay, so now you want it closed. So go ahead and pump it 4 times and hold it down. Let me know when it's down. Oh, see that? That seal did not work, so we got to redo that. All right, go ahead and light it up and stop. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen this up and then retorque it. I forgot to change the seal right here, and that's where the leak was coming from. This side was fine. So what I did is I went ahead, and I didn't change it. I went ahead and I opened it up and I moved this up and down several times while moving this to try to clear out any debris or anything that was in there. Then I went ahead and torqued it back down. And I did that twice and it doesn't seem to be leaking anymore. So sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. I don't recommend it. I recommend you just replace them. And since it worked, I'm not going to replace it. The difference is you may end up using a little bit more brake fluid than you want, which wouldn't be a lot. That's it right there. So all right, now what I did is I went ahead to make sure that this wasn't leaking, is I used a fresh paper towel and I cleaned everything off until the paper towel was spotless. And I mean spotless, meaning no wetness on it. Then what I did is I took a dry area and I stuck it up under here. Now go ahead and pump it 4 times and hold it. All right, do it again. He's pumping it 4 times and then he tells me he's holding it. One more time. Alright, so now I can pull this off and I should see no wetness or brake fluid or anything here. And it's perfectly dry right here where it was at. So I know that this is sealed now. So now I can go back up here and finish bleeding the brakes. So I need my 10 millimeter, wherever it is. Here it is. Sorry about that. All right, pump it 4 times and hold it. All right, and you're gonna let some more fluid out, like that. And when he does that, see it dripping down on the bottom there? When he does that, that brake pedal will actually start to go down on the floor. And it's important that they don't let back up. You gotta let it go down. And then all you want to do is you do this about 5 or 6 times so you see no more air coming out of here. And then once that's done, you're good. Now what you need to do is you need to wipe all this stuff off so it doesn't get up here in your rotor and into your brakes. So pump the brakes and let me know if they're normal. All right, let's go ahead and get this cleaned up. Well, we can do that afterwards. I want to show them what to look for now. Straighten the wheel up. All right, that's good. All right, so now what we're looking for is this should be able to turn by hand when he releases the brakes. Before, we had to put the tire on here and reef on the tire. I mean, literally reef on the tire to get this to move. And that's because the caliper pistons were frozen up. Remember we took it apart and we took those caliper pistons and we were trying to put them in and they would stick? Well, that's what the problem was, is it would force those pistons down and they would bind up inside this caliper. So before we could use these, we needed to put about 1/1000, 2/1000 clearance all the way around that hole that those pistons went in. We needed to recondition those pistons and hone the inside of this caliper right here. And we did that, and you saw how it would just drop in and there was just a little tiny bit of play, that 1 or 2,000. That's what you're looking for. And then when you put the seal in there, that seal probably sits out, probably a good 10,000ths, and you push that piston into that seal and that seal goes in and it spreads and it fills in that whole channel that was all the way around there. And when the brake fluid comes up and presses on that seal wants to give in the middle, which the brake fluid now pushes on it against the piston and the caliper, and it seals it up, and that's what makes these things work. All right, so now that we got this done, and now that we can take this and we can turn it by hand, go ahead and press on the brakes. See, they lock up now. That's what we need. Let them go. That is a properly operating caliper. So let's go ahead, we'll get all this cleaned up. We're not going to show that to you. We'll just use some paper towels and some alcohol and some brake clean and stuff. But we won't spray it on there. We're going to wipe it on there. We don't want the brake clean getting down into our rubber bushings and stuff. That's not good for it. You know, as much as possible there. Okay, so let's get this cleaned up. Let's get the tire on it, and then we'll check it for operation. Right, there's one thing I forgot to mention, and that is when you're doing this, periodically come up here and check to make sure that you still got brake fluid in there. If you run this dry, you're going to have some serious issues because you're going to get air back in the lines. So you got to check it. Fortunately, we put enough brake fluid in there, and when we pumped it, it didn't pop up and spill out into the engine bay, which happens on some master cylinders when you bleed brakes. So everything worked out great. Sorry I forgot to mention that earlier. If you're doing the CTS, great. Probably won't have an issue with it. If you're using another car, and this same principle applies for this car as it does any other car, unless it's some obscure system I'm not aware of. So Don't forget to check for the brake fluid levels and stuff, and make sure that they're fine. All right, we're gonna go ahead, like I said, and clean up, and then we're gonna finish up this video. All right, guys, go ahead and put the tire back on the car. Put the lug nuts on, snug them down as best you can. You can either have somebody step on the brakes while you torque them down, or after you've just snugged them up, you can put the car back down on the ground and then snug them up. Either way is fine. Don't forget to remove the rear wheel chock and take it for a test drive. When you take it for a test drive, though, be easy on the brakes to start with, just to make sure that everything's going good. Take it back into the driveway. Turn the wheel to, since we did the passenger tire, turn the wheel all the way to the left, to the driver's side, and then look down there and make sure there's nothing leaking and everything. And if everything's good and the brakes seem to be working well, then go ahead and take it up on the freeway and test it at some higher speeds there. Don't go crazy, don't get a speeding ticket or nothing, or get reckless, but check it on some good side roads and take it up on the freeway and make sure everything's good. Do some sudden stops with it, obviously with nobody behind you, and with regard to safety around you and other people. And if all's good, then you're probably up and running. If not, then you're going to have to do some diagnosis, and if you're not familiar with brakes, then take it to a professional. So God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Keith Nunn out. Bye.